Thank you, firstly, for inviting me to this webinar. I've got a very, a sketchy knowledge about this particular subject, except that I served 4 tenures in Jammu and Kashmir, both sides of Peer Panjal, that is south of Peer Panjal and north of Peer Panjal. And my experience or my understanding of the entire conflict is based on my interaction with the people and subsequently a little bit of research when I wrote some articles here and there. But before I start, there are a couple of things I would like to put it on record. Firstly, through this webinar, I wish to convey my tributes to those unknown victims, those who lost their lives in 1947-48, that is in Mirpur, Muzaffarabad, Bhimbar Gali, Domil, Uri, Baramulla, and some peripheral areas, including Budgam, where 200 Sikhs lost their lives while defending the honor of their women and children. So first, my tribute to them. The second aspect is that it is most unfortunate that the genocide which Pakistan perpetuated with the assistance of British colonial power has gone unpunished till date. And it is very sad that the United Nations Human Rights Amnesty International has taken no cognizance of the lives lost and the human abuse which took place during this particular period. No nation in the modern history, especially post First World War, had ever asked their militias, irregulars, to keep the loot of the war. And when I say the loot of the war, that they could keep the women, those who were captured, the money, the property, and the territorial geography which they had captured with them. This is unprecedented. And for some unknown reason, we have felt shy for almost 70 years that we have not talked about this. I've recently written 2 articles on these issues. That even today, we as part of collective conscious should bring this particular fact to the global community, that what kind of a crime was perpetuated on innocent civilians by a state called Pakistan, and that too with the connivance of a colonial power, Britishers. Now, with these 2 things, Brigadier Dheman has given a very, very detailed and very elaborate, articulation of the history, how things happened on ground. I will take very short, just about 10 minutes of intervention. And the 3 things that I wish to put across, that what prompted Pakistan, because ultimately it was not the Britishers, those who were fighting on ground, but what prompted Pakistan to take this military adventure, that is one. What was Pakistan's strategy? And how did we handle it when the Indian Armed Forces went into Jammu and Kashmir? Was it a smooth sailing, or did they face any problem? And what was the kind of a situation which was there? And with 2 anecdotes which I personally interacted with the people, those who were during my tour of duty in Jammu and Kashmir. But suffice to say that it was within 10 weeks of India and Pakistan having separated and both nations having got their freedom. It's not possible for a country to go for war and plan for a war until or unless there is a tacit support. कोई plan नहीं बन सकता 10 week के अंदर to launch a military adventure on a neighboring country. It's not possible until or unless there is a tacit support or there is a guarantee that their military adventure will be successful. The second aspect is that Pakistan was sure that their coercive policy against Maharaja will succeed. And that is the reason that they had written to Maharaja after having signed the standstill agreement, which India had not signed, but Pakistan had signed the standstill agreement, that their relationship with Jammu and Kashmir will remain same as they were with the British colonial empire. But the fact of the matter is, and what they wrote is, to Maharaja was that the time has come to Maharaja of Kashmir that he must take his choice and choose Pakistan to merge with. Now, when a state articulate this kind of a policy or this kind of a coercion, that means there is a deep thought behind it, and it is not one of those off the cuff strategy which they unfolded subsequently. Now, in my own perception, that what was it, what was that strategic reasons that after 1947, August 1947, Pakistan chose to attack through non-state actors and somewhere along with their regulars as well. Now, there could be military, there are military reasons, there are geographical reasons, there are political reasons why Pakistan could take this adventure in Jammu and Kashmir. But there was a perception, broad perception on the ground, that first is that the security situation after the British colonial empire have had given freedom to India and Pakistan, that the security situation in Jammu and Kashmir state is fragile. And therefore, the border states or the frontiers were fractured and they could be Islami sliced by Pakistan. But they went beyond the Islami slicing and they thought that this is an opportunity that first you take the frontiers and then subsequently hit the heart of the state, and that is Srinagar. So that was a perception with the Pakistan, that it's a fragile security environment exists. The second perception within the Pakistan politico-military leadership was that there is a communal divide in Jammu and Kashmir state. And this communal divide, they perceived that it is from part because of the Punch rebellion and part because of not so popular Dogra regime in Kashmir Valley. But the fact of the matter is that this communal divide did not emerge or did not help the cause of the invaders subsequently when they came to Kashmir Valley. But that was the perception. The third reason for Pakistan was their success in Punch rebellion. Now, this is very, very significant because the Punch rebellion initially, it was not supported by Pakistan, but it was because of the internal fault lines. Except Punch city, rest were taken by the rebels from the Punch, those who were led by Sardar Ibrahim Khan and Sardar Abdul Qayyum. And what had happened is that before that was, I think, somewhere between 22nd and 24th of October, when they had already declared Ajad Jammu and Kashmir, that is part of Punch and Rajouri area. And in fact, where I served, commanded my RR unit in Punch Rajouri, Gamir Mugla was a place in Rajouri district which was captured by the rebels in 1947-48, and large number of the population had gone across from Gambir Mugla and Rajouri area, including Pir Kaleba and Haryana top, that entire ridge line. They had gone across to Pakistan and they came back. Some came back almost after a year and some came back after 6 to 8 months. So that was the third kind of perception, that there is an internal fault line and which triggered their military adventure in Jammu and Kashmir. The fourth reason was that the Indian political leadership did not show any clarity as far as what will be the structure or architect of the entire, eastern and the northern states. And therefore, there was ambiguity. Jawaharlal Nehru was not clear whether it should merge with India or should not merge till he was coerced and forced by Sardar Patel to accept the accession treaty with the Jammu and Kashmir, when he asked him that, Jawahar, do you want Kashmir or not? Let's not talk about culture and other thing. You just answered that, do you want Kashmir or not? And when he said that, yes, we want. And that is a time when Sardar Patel told then Colonel Manik Shah that you got your orders. And that's how the military mobilization took place. Now, the last, my own perception is that there were four kinds of, people in Jammu and Kashmir. Because when you go to an unknown territory, certainly you cannot go to the places unless you are guided by someone, those who are the local inhabitants of that particular area. So there were four different kinds of support which the invaders got in both south of Pir Panjal as well as north of Pir Panjal. And the first among them was the Muslim League agents and agitators from Pakistan, because at that point in time they had relationship on both sides, and they used to frequently move from of course Pakistan side into India. Then that wasn't Pakistan, but from both sides of India they used to move into Kashmir, into the Kashmir Valley. That was the first kind of a people those were. Then there were people those who had raised in their enthusiasm a welcome sort of this thing, and they acted as a guide and brought these guys from Uri, Gulmarg and Kupwara down to Baramulla, Badgam, and then outskirts of Kashmir. Now they were all guided by these enthusiasts, those who thought that they will get rid of Maharaja and the Dogra ruler. So they were there, but of course very minuscule population which was existing at that point in time. The third was Muslim deserters, those who deserted the Maharaja's army, and then they were loitering around, and they saw it as an opportunity to join these invaders, and then acted as a guide during the conflict in 1947-48. And the last but not the least was the Pashtun. Now Pashtun, why did the Pakistan choose Pashtun? There were two reasons for choosing Pashtun tribes to come to Kashmir and liberate Kashmir. The first was that there was the architect of this Kashmir invasion was Colonel Akbar Khan, later on Major General Akbar Khan, who was the first one to use the non-state actors against state as a low-cost option. So he was influenced, and he gave the Muhammad of Ghazni's example to his people, and of course the Pashtun, that your forefathers had gone towards the east and they became rich, and that kind of a thing. And the second was the lure of the wealth and the women. So that was the second reason. In fact, most of them were not paid by Pakistan when they came down to the side of the Kashmir. So these were certain reasons that prompted Pakistan that this is an opportunity to take Kashmir by force, by coercion, or by military action. Now, what was Pakistan's strategy? See, we got to look at today in retrospect, we can actually examine, but that point in time, it was not possible. But in retrospect, when we look at the strategy of Pakistan was completely different for three different reasons. In Jammu and Kashmir, there were erstwhile three regions, Ladakh, Poonch, Rajouri, and the Kashmir Valley. They had a different strategy for all the different this thing. Now in Poonch and Rajouri, it was the capture occupation was led by the Poonch rebellion and the leaders, and subsequently supported by Pakistan Army and of course the Pashtun raiders. Now the history goes that when the plan Operation Gulmarg was put across to the Prime Minister of Pakistan that point in time, and they asked that the army should also be part of it. So initially the British commander refused that, no, do not, because the moment you put the army, then it is a declared war. So that is part of the answer of the anchor, that why it was not given this thing is because they did not, the British commander did not allow the overt use of Pakistan army for any military adventure in Jammu and Kashmir, both sides of Pir Panjal. So that was one particular reason. But what the Prime Minister said when he was given the plan, two plans he approved. The first plan was, he said, when he was told that instead of, okay, fine, in case you do not give permission to launch military offensive in Jammu and Kashmir, then the second option with us is to raise a tribal militia force consisting of approximately 20,000 people from Pakhtunkhwa. And the second plan was that arm the Poonch rebellion. Now these were the two plans which were approved, and they actually put this in practice. So that means that for Kashmir Valley, They had invaders spearheading as a vanguard to capture Srinagar. And as far as the Punch, Rajouri, Bimber, Mirpur, Muzaffarabad was concerned, that was the to be spearheaded by the Punch rebellion. And the third was Ladakh, where Gilgit-Baltistan, they had a different strategy, and that strategy was actually assisted by Major Brown when he revolted against the Britishers and the entire Gilgit Scout, which was primarily Muslim force at that point in time. They revolted and went and joined Pakistan. So there were three different strategies which they adopted, and there was not one sacrosanct or one templated strategy in 1947 which Pakistan adopted, and that actually gave them initial success. And uh, the uh, the next strategy which the Pakistan, which is not talked about much, is they put in place was the strategy of ethnic cleansing of Hindus and Sikh from Mirpur, Muzaffarabad, Baramulla, and of course the plan was to reach Srinagar. And in that, what their strategy was: leave none to tell the tale of terror. Now, this is something which is absolutely disgusting and which is unfortunate, but they actually put that strategy in place, that leave none to tell the tale of terror. And that it was against whom? Against the Hindus and Sikh, and especially the Sikh, because Sikhs were seen as one of those who had, you know, uh, created some violence when the Hindus were killed in Lahore and other parts of Pakistan. So the invaders were specifically looking for Sikhs, and that is how 200 Sikhs, I made a mention short while ago, that they were killed in Badgam district when they were defending the honor of their women and children. Uh, the but the bottom line of this entire strategy was a scorched earth policy. Now, in this particular strategy, which the Pakistan army plus the militia, irregulars, and the raiders they adopted was scorched earth policy. That means that whatever comes in your way and whatever you cannot loot and bring, destroy and burn. Therefore, what do? You destroy the life supporting sustenance of the people and then cleanse, control, and then consolidate the captured area. Now, this is how it actually unfolded on ground subsequently. And when I say scorched earth policy, uh, Brigadier Dheman talked about this particular issue in Baramulla, where a hospital, St. Joseph Hospital, the nursing staff, the paramedic staff, and the school teachers, nuns, they were raped, killed, and even the hospital where patients were there was burnt down to ashes. And in fact, the burning down of this hospital actually gave a wake up call to the Britishers that what they have done is not a right thing, and they have actually fallen in the trap laid by Pakistan politico military leadership. They realized it only after the burning down of the hospital, and then the attitude of Pakistan changed thereafter. Now, coming back to the Indian strategy, there has been a talk, and yes, people must ask question that why we did not. Firstly, why we don't talk about the people, those who lost their lives from Mirpur, Muzaffarabad, Bimba, and Domel area. Uh, and even today we don't talk about, whereas in that particular area, in these townships, there was 20% population of Hindus and Sikhs. And today it is almost negligible, almost zero, you can say. That is the kind of ethnic cleansing which has taken place in that area. Uh, there was a post Mirpur and Muzaffarabad carnage after 3 days when one of the gentlemen, the local Muslim, came out, and what he saw on the street, and he said, this was recorded by the BBC, for some time, when uh, he said that in the street there were not even dogs and birds. There was sunshine, but a stench of death. That was the kind of thing, and there were burning of houses which continued for days together. That was the kind of a carnage which and the mayhem which these invaders had left in both Mirpur and Muzaffarabad. As far as the why we could not start this campaign, Brigadier Dheman has given a detailed account how Lord Mountbatten intervened, but there were other operational aspect which actually was a hindrance to the armed forces. The situation that time was that the state forces were disorganized, and the cohesion was broken because there was no communication, and therefore the coordination of the Indian army uh, uh, on ground situation wasn't as effective as it should have been. Had it been effective, then probably we would have moved to the areas which were seriously impacted by the uh, you know uh, carnage which had taken place. The second aspect was that there was lack of situational awareness, what is happening at what place, because the communication had broken down. There was no communication directly from Gilgit Baltistan, because the communication from Gilgit Baltistan was through Pakistan and then to this side, and therefore since there were uh, both sides had British officers and they had connived and under direction from the Mountbatten, so the information was not flowing smoothly. The what is happening in Gilgit Baltistan, what is happening in Skardu, uh, Khar, Unza, those areas. So it was not coming. Now the similar kind of situation was prevailing both in Punch, Rajouri and Uri Baramulla area. So the situational awareness coming wasn't forthcoming, and therefore it impeded military operations and the mobilization of forces to the key decision areas, both in Jammu and Kashmir, both in Srinagar Valley and in the Punch Rajouri area. Now, when you have this kind of operational vacuum, you would understand that it is not easy for you to operate. Of course, there were plenty of guides available for the Indian Army at that point in time, but where the enemy is, what are they doing at that point in time, this kind of information is not available. But it is remarkable that in spite of the fact that there was information vacuum, intelligence vacuum, yet the troops, those who were inducted, they hit the ground running, and whatever part we have today is primarily because of the rapid mobilization and the action taken by the armed forces at that point in time. uh, I would also like to, before I conclude, two important issues which I would like to, highlight is that it was a robbery of humanity, and what the Pakistan has done that point in time, and it continues to do even today, is this robbery of humanity. It is robbery of territorial geography. It is robbery of human assets. It is robbery of the future generation of those people, those who lost their lives, and it is also the robbery of culture. They have obliterated the culture which was prevailing in Pak occupied Kashmir and Sharda Peeth. Who doesn't know about Sharda Peeth? So that is one particular aspect, and we have not actually highlighted this. The next point, the conclude from my point, is that Pakistan has not been able to liberate Kashmir the way they had planned in Operation Gulmarg. But what they have done is they have weakened the political process, they have militarized the societies, and they have brought two nuclear neighbors to a flashpoint where there is always a threat of war every time. The war with Pakistan today, because of 1947-48 genocide and robbery of our territory by Pakistan, is just one incident away. We have seen it, what happened in Pulwama. We have seen it, what happened post uh, Uri. And therefore, this entire South Asian region, they have brought it at a nuclear flashpoint by their state policy of using non-state actors uh, mm, as a tool of foreign policy. With this, I will end my discourse, and rest of things we can then discuss subsequently once all the speakers have spoken. Thank you very much for giving me an opportunity.